Hi, everyone, and welcome to our Worried About Nothing podcast. We thought we'd talk about love today because it seems to be a topic that everyone's interested in, everyone's curious about. A lot of people in the groups, the spiritual groups that we are part of, ask what it is. So we thought we might just speak about our experiences and speak about the different kinds of love. And please bear with me today. I'm not feeling well, so if I start talking in tongues, just ignore me. And my name is Kim.
I'm Danielle.
And I'm Katya.
So welcome to our podcast. So love, it's a big topic to tackle.
Yeah, it's kind of like where to begin. I can say that there are a couple of different types of love that I feel like come to mind. And I know sometimes people will get mad at me saying like, no, love is love. It's not different types of love, but I beg to disagree with that, at least for now. And being that you can have like friend type love, the way you love a friend, and then there's romantic love, familial love, things like that. But yeah, I've had people get mad at me in the past before for saying that there are different types of loves, but right now that I do feel that. And then like a more universal love as well.
Yeah, I might be one of those who might disagree.
Go ahead.
Because I see love as true unconditional love, that you love for everything. And conditional love, that's how I define what love is. And then there's different type of relationships. So you have obviously what you define as different love, but I think it's a different relationship. So you have a mother-child relationship. And obviously you can have a partner relationship, a friend relationship, but I think love is still there. If you unconditionally love somebody, I don't see how it can be different.
I guess that's the key though, isn't it? When you say unconditional love, because I guess everyone's definition or understanding of love is based on the example they had growing up or what their own experience is. And so often love is not unconditional. So people may talk about it, they'll say, I love you unconditionally, but then they put a huge amount of condition on it, which means that it's not unconditional. So I guess I would say there's human love and then there's divine love. And divine love is unconditional, whereas human love often is the love label on something else, so it can be, instead of somebody loving somebody else, it can be that they lust after them, or they desire them, or they want to control them, or they want to own them, or they want to swallow them up or disappear into them or be friends with them, or all these other terms that the label love is put on. He's been sleeping and quiet all day and then he wakes up now. So
like, don't you love me?
It's like, not right now, no.
But I thought you loved me unconditionally.
No, but I'm human, right?
It's a good one.
Because I think that often people don't really know what love is. Love can be a bit of a theory, or it can be a dream, or it can be some kind of yearning, and I think that the way that love is portrayed in the media and in songs and films, especially those romantic comedy rom-coms or whatever they're called, that isn't love. To me, that's not love. That's two people feeling an attraction or wanting somebody or not wanting to be alone or disappearing into some kind of fantasy, but love is real, and love is, as you said, Katya, is unconditional. And I think if we can experience that, then we know love. But I think a lot of people go through life not experiencing that, or not really knowing that, not touching that.
I would agree with that. I think there's different understanding of love, because my understanding was completely different. I thought that I was the most unloving person. You might know, because I thought that love is all about, talking sweet things and being nice and being, I don't know, I think Karate may use the term sugary devotional and things like that. So that was my understanding. It's like, I don't do any of that. I don't even feel doing like that. I must be completely ungrateful. When will I learn what love is? So that was my understanding. And I think that's what most people understand, that what love is. And in many cases, like even the relationship, the love doesn't happen right away. You might have physical reaction, you might have attraction and hormones and all of that, but this is not love. And love is something that grows over time through the acceptance of the person, whether you like it or not, whether it meets your expectations or not. And if you can still love that person, that's definitely overcoming some of the conditions.
Yeah, I think that is a very good point, that a lot of people seem to, or the media, the way it portrays love is this sugary sweetness, sickly and kind of gag making. It's like a manipulation or control, really. Sometimes it's, I will only love you if you are this XYZ, or if you're sweet, or if you're kind, or if you're good, or you're nice, or any of the other, in inverted commas, good qualities to be. But like you say, it's love really is loving everything, you know. And sometimes the most love that I've felt is not necessarily somebody being sweet and kind to me, but sometimes love can be like a smack in the face, not physically, but, you know, it can be a pulling you out of some kind of dream you're in, or some kind of illusion that you're really, really suffering through, or it can be telling you something straight. You know, tough love is definitely a very good form of love, but love isn't being acquiescent and going along with everything and whatever you say, and, you know, just admiring you and all of that kind of thing. Because love can sometimes be really full of rage or passion or anger, or stories like, for example, you know, a mother picking up a car of her child, you know, that kind of thing. Love can be extraordinary. Or one person driving off a multitude to protect somebody they love, that kind of thing. It's almost like it imbues you with superhuman powers, because it's nothing to do with you. It's not about you anymore. To me, it's connecting to, or absorbing, or opening your heart to the love that's there. So it's nothing to do with you feeling an amount of love in your heart, because that's small. It's connecting to the love that is, the love that exists, and that's infinite. So because there's no limit on it, there's no box you can put around it, there's no definition or condition you can put on it. And like you were saying, the unconditional aspect of it means that there's no limit, there's no conditions, there's nothing that's making it small or making it suit your purposes. And it's kind of like love exists whether we care about it or not, whether we notice it or not, it's there, you know. Because often, with going back to the rom-coms and the films and the movies and music and that kind of thing, the lyrics in them often, it's not love they're talking about, it's fear, or sometimes it's stalking or other disturbing things that are masquerading as love. These songs that are all about watching your every move and all this kind of thing. And it's like the Police song, you know, Every Breath You Take. That's about a stalker. And people go, oh, it's such a romantic, beautiful song. And it's like, no, this is guy following this woman around and watching every breath she takes and every move she makes. You know, it's creepy. It's not love at all. You know, people go, oh, I played at my wedding. And it's like, oh my God. But like we've said before in previous podcasts, you know, the media does manipulate and create the definition of what things are supposed to be. And it's another means of control, really, that kind of love, in inverted commas, which is not love.
Yeah, love could be really admiration of what's around you. Like recently, what I found, that just because I planted a little garden, just sitting there and watching the plants grow, it's amazing. You just notice every day a little bit how they grow. And I don't know, like there's no condition. If you don't grow, I don't love you. If you don't produce fruit, well, I'll hate you. I'm thinking about God. Sometimes people are like, why God doesn't love me? I just asked him to get that beautiful, nice house and I didn't get it. What's happening? Why did he abandon me?
Yeah.
There's just so many conditions we put. And I don't think as a humanity we actually know what unconditional love is, because we've been grown up with so many conditions, with all, as you said, media, Kim, and all the manipulation. And what we believe love is. And a lot of the times, as I remember, it's associated with flowers, with a man opening the door for you, being a gentleman and this and that, and the list can go on and on, but it's all really conditions. It's just so conditional. And then I met a couple yesterday in the community garden, and I think the guy was native, and I think she was from the US, but you can just see the connection between the two of them. And it was amazing. They were just both sitting, just picking up and eating some vegetables from the garden. I was like, oh, wow, that is so sweet to see. Like, to me, that was more love than any of the sweet Hollywood stories that we've seen in the movies.
Yeah, because they're letting each other be themselves. That's what love is. It's like you were saying about your garden or being in a forest or by the sea. You just feel such love because the elements and nature is just being. And you're connecting with the beingness and allowing it to be. It's not like you stand in front of the sea going, oh, I'm going to try and control the waves. I'm going to stop them hitting the shore. And I think you made a good point about people talking about God or talking about wanting things or partners, desiring their partners to be a certain way. Because all of that is just about control and making everything about oneself. And that's not love. Because if love in your mind is to make everyone around you or everything you profess to so-called love behave exactly as you want them to behave, that's a dictatorship. That's not a love environment at all. So it's about letting it go. That saying, what you love, set it free. And if it returns to you, it's love. Not that I think you should set it free and have it return to you, but you should set it free. To me, a loving relationship is where any kind of relationship, whether it be a romantic relationship or a friendship relationship or a parent-child relationship or whatever it is two people allowing each other to be free and allowing each other to be themselves and do what they wish to do without any imposition of guilt or strictures or rules or constraints or anything like that. Like you said, the two people picking vegetables together, that's love because they're not kind of bending over each other going, no, you can't pick them like that and pick them for me, not for you. And I think the freer that anything is, the less you hold on to something, the more loving it is. The less you have attachment to something, the more loving it is. So sometimes when people are extremely loving, like Jason sometimes, when he's extremely loving, but he will tell you straight where you're going wrong, that can be the most loving thing because he's not attaching anything to it. And he's loving you enough to say it without any kind of, like we said in the last podcast, without any kind of restricting himself in case he gets the scratches on the face. It's just an outpouring. It's like a breath. Because I've been in romantic relationships where they've been very controlling and the person, for example, is always telling me that they love me and they think I'm amazing and all these kind of things. And it's just felt so horrible and controlled and like a little prison cell because they're only not, well, first of all, they're not loving me, but they're only saying they're loving me or feeling this feeling because they want me to behave in exactly the way that they want me to behave. And as soon as I step out of that behavior, I'm, oh no, it's such a disappointment, or whatever it might be. And that's awful. I've had some friends, some girlfriends friends that are girls who have been in long-term relationships, sometimes marriages, where the marriage has been so-called successful because they've completely given up everything that they are, their whole personality, just to please their husband. And so he's been very, very happy. She's not had a life until one day when hopefully they wake up and go, well, actually, this is not what I want. And they start being themselves again. Suddenly the husband's not happy because they're not behaving the way that they're supposed to, in inverted commas. And the marriage breaks up. And there's no allowance there for the woman to be herself. It's all about just being almost like a maid or a slave to the husband. I mean, that's an extreme situation. I know not all marriages are like that at all, but I know one or two that have been like that. Yeah, it's not love on either side, I would say. And like with friends, if you love your friend, you want your friend to be themselves, to grow, to learn, to be able to express themselves in any way that they feel they need to. And it can't be through the filter of your own desires or your own restrictions, so you can't stop them from speaking or saying things that you might not want to hear, because who are you to tell them what they can and can't say? That kind of thing, I feel that is important, or more loving than a friendship where both parties can't say what they think, or they can't say what they feel, or they're just walking around on eggshells or putting up with each other. You see those friendships sometimes where people meet up and like, oh, thank God that's over. I don't have to see them again for another year. You think, wow, that's not the kind of friendship that you'd want to have. That's not a loving friendship, surely. I mean, I don't know. I'm not in those friendships, but just from what you see and the energy of them, it doesn't feel very open. There's not much fluidity there. There's no flow, love. And love can be really harsh sometimes as well. Sometimes it can just be a stripping away of all your illusion or all of your crap. It's like the antithesis of the Hollywood love, because it's like self-love, for example, is being able to know that you're exactly perfect the way you are and you're fine, faults and all. You don't need somebody to complete you. You don't need somebody to validate you. You don't need somebody to boost your ego. You don't need somebody to compliment you or make you feel good. I think because that whole thing, especially in the spiritual community of twin flames and finding your other half and all of that, that's going into life or going through life believing that you're broken, believing that you're half of something, you're not a complete whole. And how can that be love? And then you find somebody to complete you, which implies that you've been limping along as a half person, you need them. And that's just insane to me. I don't get it. But I can kind of understand it, because the conditioning you have, if you watch too many romantic movies, and I did when I was younger, it's all about somebody seeing you through different eyes, so then you can see yourself through their eyes, and suddenly you feel that you're a better person than you thought you were. And I've got to the stage now where I think, well, just cut out all that middle bullshit and just kind of see yourself through your own eyes as a better person that you are. I'm wasting time.
I was actually going to bring this up as a question to both of you, pose the question of how you feel about the love yourself. Like, you need to love yourself before you can either love anybody else or let anybody else love you. So, Kim, how do you feel about that?
Well, I feel there's some truth to that, because if you don't know how to love yourself, you don't know how to love somebody else. And if you don't love yourself, you're not going to let somebody else love you, because if there's a part of you, whether it's conscious or subconscious, that believes that you're not worthy of love, then you're not going to let somebody love you fully, truly, unconditionally, because you're going to try and sabotage it, whether it's consciously or otherwise. And you'll have conditions on the love. So if you have self-hatred or lack of love for yourself, you're not going to believe that somebody else can love you. So you'll be testing them all the time. So it'll kind of be like so you say you love me, therefore you must do X, Y, Z. Or if you love me, you'll know what I'm thinking. Or impossible tests that people sometimes do, put up for other people. So I believe there is some truth to that. And I feel that I grew up not loving myself at all, really. And it's only in recent times that I really am starting to love myself. And I'm feeling more and more, as I love myself more, that I don't actually need a partner. Because to some extent, what the partner would have been a crutch or a prop or something to, in inverted commas, complete me, which I don't believe I need anymore. So if I were to have a relationship with somebody, I think it would be very different now to any relationship I'd had in the past. Because in some ways, I feel that in a relationship, a romantic relationship, or love, whatever you want to call it, it's not about tying yourself into somebody and becoming one. I mean, to some extent, the life experiences and everything you share bring you together, I feel, but you're still walking through life as an individual. You're walking with them, not as one unit. I mean, you're one unit in that you're together, but not I think a lot of people can sometimes give themselves up, or give up a lot of themselves into a relationship. And again, I feel that that's not loving themselves truly or enough. If you feel that somebody else is more worthy than you are and you want to become one with them, or you feel that you're not complete without them, or you feel whatever you feel by giving up your sense of self, that's not love. Because to me, love is, like I said earlier, it's kind of connecting to the love that's there. So it's there, there's an unlimited amount of it. So in a romantic relationship, it's two people enjoying that river, rather than kind of going, oh, there's a little trickle, let's squirrel it away. And that's my view anyway. I don't know.
Just thinking about the view, but I know that there is also things like karma yoga, and some people may still love another person unconditionally, and even though they might experience certain things that we don't consider love, they might still love them and be with them and kind of sacrifice their love for that person. So I can still see there could be love in there, as long as they don't place any condition, and as long as they accept and don't really suffer from it, and they don't see it, like somebody's abusing them. They just truly unconditionally love the other person. And even though certain things might not be comfortable for them, but they're just doing karma yoga, and and that's sort of love. I can see it could be that way too. I'm just trying to think. I've recently read, I think there was a post going around Facebook about white slavery. And they were talking about Irish slaves, and they were talking about mothers. So even if they let mothers be free of slavery, many of them still stayed there because their kids were not free. So even though you see yourself, you're not happy in that life, being a slave, but you can still sacrifice yourself because you love your child, and you still stay there. Well, it is love to me.
Yeah, it is. And that's the unconditional part of it, though. So it's not about you, because what I was talking about was referring to making it about yourself, So in that situation, yes, of course, the mother's staying because they love the child unconditionally. So they will want to be there to help them if they can. But even if they can't help them, they want to be there. But it would be different if it were a situation where, it wouldn't happen with a mother and a child, but let's say boyfriend, girlfriend, where the girlfriend made the boyfriend stay because she trapped him through guilt or trapped him through manipulation or whatever it might be. Do you know what I'm saying? Maybe I wasn't very clear before, but yeah, there can be pain, there can be suffering. I do agree with that, but it's constricting it down. It's putting the conditions on it. The more conditions you put on it, the less it's love. Whereas the unconditionality of it, it's like sacrifice. People that give up their lives for others, that's huge ultimate love. That's massive.
Right. And I think that's what you're saying, Katya, in a way that they're giving up their life for their children through staying in that situation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, sacrifice is a massive action of love, I believe.
If you're not doing it in your own, I guess that's what you were talking about, Kim, as long as it's not done because of your own suffering or because of your own conditions, thinking that, oh, I must sacrifice myself because of this, this, and this. So, as you say, it's all to do whether there is any condition placed or not.
Yeah, I think it goes back to motive. It's like someone sacrificing themselves because they're afraid that they'll lose their relationship otherwise. Okay, so I'll just sacrifice these parts of my personality. I'll stop being this way, and this way, so I can hold on to this out of like a place of fear.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what I meant to say. Yeah. And I think also it can be, a friend of mine had a really, really very, very dysfunctional relationship a few years ago, and we were on holiday, and she'd just broken up with her boyfriend finally after many years trying to get out of the relationship. And he rang her up and told her that he was going to kill himself, and she was on the other side of the world, and kept her on the phone for hours. She's crying, there's nothing she can do. And he was down the pub or something, it wasn't even remotely something that he was going to do, but he so wanted to control her and make her feel awful. So that kind of sacrifice is not what I'm talking about. But people do that, even in lesser forms. It's kind of the manipulation tactics.
I had 2 of those relationships when I was younger. There was a guy who told me that if I'm not going to be with him, he's going to kill himself. And I was like, okay, I think he's trying to manipulate me. And then, but it was still in the back of my mind. So I'd come in next weekend and check, is he still alive? But then the last relationship I was in, we were together for about 7 or 8 years. And when I left, he would send me an email, something like he had cancer and he's going to die. And it was my now husband was like, he's manipulating you. So I ended up deleting and putting everything in the junk mail so I don't get anything, and blocked that email address. But people do that to manipulate. And you can see how you can fall for it, because the first thought is like, oh, I have to do something. I have to save that person. Oh, they're doing it because of me. I must help. But then once you realize that this is nothing but manipulation, you just have to let it go. And you don't want to deal with this kind of people, because there is no love in there for sure.
Right.
If they can't have you, then it's like, I remember watching actually sort of a soap opera. This is about, I think it was done in, I'm trying to remember where it was done. In Portugal, I think, trying to remember. But anyway, it was about a slave that was half white, half black. And the guy who really wanted to be with her, he was in charge, not in charge, what's the right word? Who's controlling the slaves?
Oh, the master?
Plantator or master, I don't know what they call it.
Yeah.
Anyway, so this guy was a master and he wanted to be with her. And then he said, well, if I can't have you, I'm going to burn you.
Wow.
So it's just it's just selfish. There's no love in there, because if you love somebody, you let that person go. You can let them be free. You're okay to separate, because if you truly love that person, you wish them the best. You want the best for them. You don't think about yourself at that point. The moment you start thinking about yourself, well, it's not love, it's ego. You want something from that person. You have this beautiful dream, this idea that this person, either your twin flame, as you were talking about, or it's your prince on that white horse, and you must be together. It's true love. And if you can't let go, and things didn't work out, and you can't let go of that person, that means you're not truly loving that person.
And even labeling them, the such big names for things. It's like twin flame or prince on shining armor coming to rescue me. That's a huge label and responsibility you're putting on somebody else immediately, even before sometimes being in a relationship with them, that they're not going to be able to live up to, because almost by definition, those are expecting that person to be perfect. The prince that's going to sweep you off your feet and make everything okay and rescue you. You're going to go from Cinderella to a princess. That's a huge ask to put on anybody. And I think sometimes in relationships, not just romantic relationships, but other kinds of relationships, they can get so not only dysfunctional, but codependent, that like in some situations where, say, for example, one person says they're going to kill themselves, the other person may go right along with it and feel needed or special, or feel that they're loved because that person, in inverted commas, loves them so much that they can't live without them. And that can be so damaging. It's a spiral. So yeah, the whole energy of it just gets more and more constricted as you kind of go and dive into it, as we're doing. But going back to the wideness of it.
Yeah, let's go back there. Let's talk about the expansive aspects of love. Yeah, it's funny because I have no idea. The older I get, the less and less I feel like I have an idea of what true love is, or experiences of unconditional love. It's just like, I don't really try too much, I guess, to find it anymore. Try to figure out what it is. I guess it'll be one of those things, you know it when you know it, when you experience it type of thing. So.
But I think that's great, isn't it? That's an expansion, because you don't have a lot of ideas about it. You just let it be.
I try not to have a lot of ideas about it. I'll say that. I do my best of trying to keep my programming at bay, because like Kim had mentioned, it's just so much in the media, in songs and in movies. And still I'll watch movies or I'll hear a song, and it's not necessarily a song that reminds me of that person, but the qualities of the song will bring up like emotions that I felt in that relationship. And I'm like, what is this? Like what? It's almost like what's happening, and it just brings out these like old emotions, and it just, I don't know, it's almost like transports me back to having that type of experience, for better or for worse, which whatever it may be. So,
but I think that's why music and popular songs about love songs can be so deadly, because they do that. They infiltrate, they're like little mind worms, or whatever the term is. They get stuck in there, and you associate so much with them because so much you take in is through sound, is the hearing. And add to that, the repetitiveness and the terminology and the longing it brings up and the energy of it all. And it can transport you back, or it can really bring something up. And that's one of the reasons I don't really listen to music anymore as much as I used to, because it does take you back to exactly where you were when that song was really important to you, or what you were feeling at that time, or anything like that. And so I can sometimes listen to songs now and not have that emotional reaction or whatever it is, but I can feel the pull of it. And it's interesting. The whole purpose of pop songs is to suck you in and make you want something, make you yearn for what you don't have. It's all mass manipulation again, going back to that, I think.
Yeah. I found it interesting though, because even in listening to music that I've never heard before, it's just whatever qualities, like emotions that are being brought up in that song, it'll stir like those old emotions. And I'm like, wow, I remember feeling what this song is singing about. And then if it's attributing those feelings to love, then it's like, well, was that love? It's like very, gets a little convoluted.
Yeah, it's interesting what you said. I had an interesting experience because I'm now listening to the classical music mostly, something that I never used to listen to. And some of the songs, I guess it's not a song, what do you call it? Some of the pieces of the classical music, I felt like I experienced a true love. I start crying because I just see how beautiful it is. And the song was named Love. And you can truly experience and feel it. And it's just so beautiful. And it's nothing that I've ever experienced with pop music. Pop music is so empty. I couldn't understand classical music as I grew up, even though I grew up in Russia and it's quite popular. Like many people do listen to classical music, but I never did because in my family, I grew up with Beatles and pop songs. That's what my mom used to listen. So of course, that's what I used to listen. And now I learn what it's like to listen to classical music, and I can't go back. I just can't stand pop. I have to turn it off. I have to leave the room. I found it's quite actually a bit annoying and irritating. I don't feel that it's true music. It's just a lot of noise in my ears.
Yeah.
Maybe we can get a link to the song that you mentioned and put it in the description box. I'd love to hear it. So.
But I agree with what you say, though. I think classical music, I'm listening to more and more of it as well. And just orchestral music is just so beautiful. I mean, instruments, including the human voice, but just instruments being played in celebration of whatever it might be, nature, love, breathing, being alive. It's just so pure. It's so beautiful. And I think there isn't that overlay that there is with pop music. You hear more and more with pop music, especially the really popular songs of the, dark forces or spells that are cast in them, or hypnosis and all of that kind of thing. And a lot of the lyrics and the music, I think some I'm not very musical, but something to do with the arrangement of the beats and that kind of thing has got a certain effect. But a lot of the lyrics aren't about what people think they are. And they will again attribute them to love, whereas they could be about stalking, or they could be about killing, or they could be about torture, or they could be about anything. But they get so ingrained that people sing them and say, oh, it's a beautiful love song. And But there's one song, I think, by Pink that came out a few years ago. And people around me at the time were going, oh, it's just such a beautiful love song. And it was about a mother who was trying to control her child to the point where the child felt that she had no existence anymore. That's not a love song, but then that's going in, you know, it's in the subconscious now that this is okay, it's acceptable. You know, so if you get outside that in classical music, there's just that purity, because it's about celebration of, like you say, love. I mean, so much of it is about love. And some of those beautiful Italian arias, you know, are just transcendent. There's a guy that lives on, I think he lives on my street, but during the lockdown, he walks past most days and he just sings these gorgeous Italian arias. And it's just so glorious. You just, you know, windows open and just feel the energy is beautiful. And I think that's what it should be. Music should be uplifting. It should be transcendent in some way, or not necessarily. I mean, you know, some music can bring out sadness and that kind of thing, but there should be a purity to it. Whereas pop music is just so manufactured that there's nothing natural left in it. And it is just, yeah, annoying sounds, because it's just manipulation constantly, you know, I feel.
Yeah.
But then I'm getting to the age now where I'm like, oh, they call that music. You know, when I was young.
We're getting old, right?
Well, I was going to say that as far as music goes, even if it's, like you said, if it brings a sort of sadness, but there's a purity to it. So like, say, maybe you're listening to a piece and it's bringing up sadness for you. It could be like in a healing way where the music's kind of helping you release the sadness, but something that's not like implanting that or driving it deeper into you, you know, where you're listening to it and you're like really holding on to the feeling and it's just kind of drilling down into you. And it's just not pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's one point that I wanted to bring, which I feel is important, and I kind of talked a little bit about it, but I feel that true love is being able to let go and set that person free, whether it's your child, whether it's your husband, whether it's your friend, basically not being so attached to the relationship. And it can be quite hard, especially with your children, right? When they get old and they're ready to leave the house. And instead of trying to keep them in the house and by your side, just letting them fly free, that's love to me. And as long as you're trying to keep them on the keychain, well, then you're trying to manipulate and control them. The same as, I think, marriage relationship. If you're just trying to cling to it so much and you wouldn't want to let it go, then it's all conditional. But if you're just ready to let it be, and if something happens, well, something happens, right? Then it meant to happen. But in any given time, you have to let it go. And this is when I remember when we're talking about Aratim and never wanting to leave her. Of course, we don't. But at the same time, I also feel that true love is also, if at some point we must go, it's something that just must happen. Even as you said before, we're always together, but just letting go of that attachment. I feel it is true love.
Yeah. Letting go of the need for somebody to be a specific thing, I think, you know, so with a child, it's letting go of the need for them to be your child and everything that you attach to that. And with Aratima, it's letting go of the need for her to be the teacher and allowing her to be Aratima, you know.
Yeah, no, you express this very well. Yes, thank you.
Because I think that's another thing about love, is that some of the conditions we put on it, or people put on it, is protection or security, you know. So like with mother, you see some mother-child relationships where the child is 60 and the mother's still treating them like they're 5, you know, because the mother still so strongly needs to be needed or needs somebody to depend on them that they're so terrified to let that go. And there might be something in that child that feels that they have an obligation towards the mother to allow that. And that stunts their growth or stunts their experience of life. But that's, you know, some people might call that love, but it's not really. It's an interpretation of love that's not correct, you know.
Feels a lot like fear to me. Sorry. Please.
But yeah, it's the fear of letting go. I think because that's a big fear for everyone, isn't it, to some extent? Because letting go can be scary because you don't know what's going to happen. But I think that's, yeah, like Katya said, that's one of the biggest forms of love is letting go. It's surrendering to what is and just allowing it to be without trying to manipulate it or control it or make it serve you. It's not about everything serving you. Love doesn't serve you. Love is. And you can serve others through love, but you can't make others serve you through love because that's not your place. And that's controlling them or trying to control them.
Which isn't love.
And to me, I don't know if I guess everything goes in waves or phases, but sometimes I feel that love is almost emptiness. So it's not even feeling anything. It's just knowing that everything is love. And then other times I just feel so much love. But in those times of emptiness, it's like love is almost objective or almost distant in a way. So I can feel or know that I love so many, people or whatever it is so much, but there's no attachment to it. So in its pure form, love doesn't have all that heaviness. The roller coaster up and downness or the weeping desire because something hasn't happened. It's almost like it's a pure spring water. There's no flavor to it, but it's just so pure. And I don't know if that's just something I'm feeling now or how true that is, but just right now, that feels true.
Beautiful. You're in a good place.
But I think also love is something that takes courage, not only from the aspect or the perspective of letting go, but allowing yourself to really feel it. I feel that there are a lot of people that are scared to really love. So sometimes they'll settle for something that is a pale imitation of it because that's all they feel they can handle. Because thinking sort of energy and size wise, it's like, instead of looking at the infinite, it's looking at a small room and going, okay, I can handle that much love. So that's what love is. That's my definition, is the bathroom. That is love, rather than the entire street or the entire planet. But I think it's interesting, something that Aratima said a few years ago. She was talking to somebody in the group, I can't remember. And she said that animals or our pets are here to teach us unconditional love. And I guess it's true in a way, apart from mine, who I don't love right now.
Perfect timing.
So everybody else unconditionally loves their pet. But no, I do love him. But I guess it's because in some ways they don't. No, he's eating sandals.
That was such a funny sound.
I've never met a cat that eats that loudly. Some are so quiet. He's like, gnawing through furniture.
Hey, that's unconditional love. He's teaching you how to enjoy his food.
You. But I guess it's because in some ways they don't really love us back. In that we put so much on them with so much kind of anthropomorphism, and we believe they love us because they come to us for cuddles or whatever it is, whereas they really want food. But the way that we love them, it's like the way that we love children, is that kind of unconditional heart opening.
But it's kind of interesting because I know a lot of people keep their pets inside, for example, cats, and I let my cat go because I was so much attached. I have a Russian blue. I have 2 cats, but the one I had from the beginning was my Russian blue. It's the oldest member of the family. And at the beginning, I was extremely attached to him. I didn't want him to go outside because I was so worried that something will happen to him. And he actually had a lot of issues, health issues, things like allergies and scratching himself. And I think he was quite stressed. And the reason being is because it's nature to go outside. And then I realized that I just can't control him. And if something happens, something happens. I mean, at least he'll have a short but happy life. So I kind of let him go outside. And now many times he doesn't even come home for the night. He just spends a lot of time outside. And I'm happy for him because a lot of issues went away. He's no longer scratching himself. He's really happy. He's always meeting us on the street, sometimes walking with us, and people just turn their head around. But to me, just again, coming back to this letting go is not so much controlling that pet because you want this pet to be around, but think what's good for the pet, what would make that pet happy. And in this case, it was letting him be outside, even though all the veterinarian doctors say that their lifetime is likely to be only 3 to 4 years because of the wildlife that we have around here. Well, so far he's been doing pretty well. I mean, we lived in this place for about 5 years. He's still okay. So hopefully he's smart enough by now.
Yeah, that is part of letting go. I think letting them be themselves, letting them be as their nature is. And I think also not holding on to them for you. Because I think, and as a pet owner myself, I know I've done this and less over the years, but at the beginning especially, I got cats because I wanted something to love. I wanted something to cuddle and I wanted something to love me. And one of my cats, my oldest cat that passed away a couple of years ago, I had a very unhealthy attachment to because I invested more in her than my other cats I ever had. And she was a special one in inverted commas, you know. So when she died, it was absolutely devastating. But I learned through that experience that I had been expecting her to live as I wanted her to. It was a control thing. It was all about me. And I think a lot of people do that with their pets. You know, they, like you say, some people keep them in, or when the cat or the dog or whatever animal it is gets sick, they refuse to put them to sleep. I mean, I used to work in a vet clinic and I saw a lot of this. Owners that would come in with these animals that were in huge amounts of pain, really suffering. They might have huge growths all over them, cancer, whatever it is. And the owner wouldn't allow them to be put to sleep, wouldn't allow them to be put out of their misery because they wanted to keep them. And we do that to our pets sometimes. And again, that's evidence of not unconditional love. You know, it's conditional love that we're expecting our pets to be our crutches. And I think that can be unhealthy too. I mean, I can see that it can be good sometimes to get pets if you live alone or you're lonely or you don't have friends or you do want somebody to love, and it can be good for that. But it's learning to love them for themselves and learning to let them go. Not necessarily just at the end, you know, through death, but letting them be themselves. Because I think after this cat, he's now 14 and he's my only remaining one. I think that's it for pets for me. I think I'm done with having pets, for at least for a while, just because I feel that for me, it's not necessarily healthy, or maybe I don't need them anymore. You know, I don't need them in the way that I did when I first started having cats, because I've had cats for 18 years now, and they've seen me through a lot, but now maybe I've got to a point where I don't need that dependence, or I don't need that comfort or security or whatever else I put on them. Because I find with this one, I mean, I kind of laugh at the fact that I tell him to shut up and stuff, but I love him, but I don't care about him at the same time, in that I don't feel that I've got any kind of attachment to him other than that he's a cat, you know, in that with my other cat that died, the one, the special one, she was my baby and she was my, you know, special girl, and we had this kind of codependent relationship. Whereas with this one, I just let him get on with what he wants to get on with, and, you know, tell him to shut up every so often. And, you know, I'm not saying that's a good thing, but I just feel for me it's healthier than other relationships I've had with other pets.
But it's also likely that the animal is likely to be healthier too, because the more conditions you place on them, the more unfree they are. That's where you can see some suffering, and it could also show us some diseases, some sort of diseases.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah.
That's what I've seen with my cat, right? So it was interesting. Once I kind of let him go and was like, well, if he's going to die, he's going to die. Once I set him free, I've noticed that he became much healthier.
Yeah. I think we do that as humans, though, in all sorts of situations, don't we? I think, because I know some women that in our 30s, friends of mine, they decided they wanted to have kids. And I've never wanted to have kids. I didn't really understand it, but they were talking about how time was right and all of this kind of stuff. And some of them would say some interesting things to me. They'd say things like, well, I mean, some of them were very open about it and say things like, well, I want to have something that's mine, or I want to have something to love, or I want to have something that's going to carry on my genes, or whatever it is. And I guess with kids, I mean, I don't understand this, and I know, Katya, you're a mum, and I'm not saying that you're like this at all, but some mothers I've seen do it not from love of their kids, but love of themselves. They want to have mini-me's, or they want to pass on their genes, or they want to carry on living after they die. You know, somehow there's not a selfless aspect to it. Whereas some mothers like you, Katya, I'm sure, are like this. There's more of it's a love. You do love them, and there's a selfless aspect to it.
Not always. I still have control that I'm noticing, and with certain things I want them to be a certain way, but then I also try to think about it and try to realize, well, this is what I want. Is it the best for them? But no, I'm not a perfect mother, and there is some selfish thoughts sometimes and selfish ideas for what I want my kids to be. But at the same time, there has to be discipline, and that's a different topic. So it is super important to have a proper discipline and structure in the family.
Oh, that's necessary. Absolutely. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's off topic.
You guys didn't answer your question. Do you believe that you can be in a relationship if you don't love yourself? What was that, the question? Yeah.
Right. Yeah, that was pretty much what I was asking was, what is your ability to love others if you can't, or you don't love yourself? Like how does that work? And you nailed it pretty much for the way that I was feeling, is like, if you don't know how to love yourself, how can you know how to love anybody else? Or if you can't accept yourself, how can you possibly let somebody else accept you? So you pretty much covered that in your answer, and that's the way that I feel. So yeah, Katya, I don't know if you want to add anything else.
Well, there's something that I found interesting, that before I met my husband, I totally decided that I don't need anyone in my life, and I just want to live for myself, because that's all I need. I don't need anyone to complete me. I'm just going to do everything I enjoy, everything I like, and be happy with it. And that was kind of interesting. I had these thoughts, not for long, because pretty shortly after the thoughts, I met my husband. And it was so much contradicting to my ideas of, it's like, that's it, I don't need any, I'm just going to be happy by myself. I'm going to do all these things that I always wanted to do.
2 minutes later.
I know, seriously. But of course, there's certain things you have to do in the family. So like there's certain restrictions because, of course, of the kids and the family and certain duties that you have to fulfill. But somehow I don't feel restricted. I still feel that I'm free to express and do certain things. Not 100%, but there is some sacrifice, of course. But I don't feel miserable, or I don't feel like I'm suffering. But if I feel like it does happen, then there is a choice, right? What do you want to do? Do you want to stay in the relationship for the kids, or do you want to be free? So that's a choice. Anyway, loving yourself is important. Let's start with that. Let's learn how to love ourselves.
Maybe we could do a whole nother podcast on that, is how do we figure out how to love ourselves? How does this work?
Well, and it's kind of interesting because I was sleeping really, really poorly. And last month or two, I was so tired. Just trying to get up for my practices was really challenging. And even to get up in the morning to do a podcast was rather challenging, because I wouldn't sleep at night, and sometimes I just fall asleep in the morning.
Oh, no.
So I was actually pretty happy when I saw this text from Kim. And sometimes I don't sleep throughout the night because I'm worried that alarm will wake up my husband and I want him to sleep. So anyway, that's not loving yourself, I guess, because it's worrying at that time about somebody else. But what was interesting is that I woke up actually this morning with the clear idea, actually it was yesterday morning, with the clear idea that I need to start eating better. I need to start taking care of my body. Because I have this idea, I was like, well, if I die, I die. It meant to happen. But then I had an image of this, for some reason, it was a guy, of really overweight guy who's extremely unhealthy and who's just eating an ice cream in one go and just sits there on the couch and being lazy. Well, it could be also a way of saying, well, I don't care, I'm going to die. So I think there is a balance between letting it go and at the same time doing what your body needs and taking action. So when we're talking about loving yourself, I feel just sitting and thinking, oh, everything will come to me, or just love God and everything will happen. Well, that's not the true approach always. Sometimes it might be the right approach if you've been really busy and running around, and you might just need to take a breath and just let it go. But in other situations, like what happened with me, well, it was really clear to me that I needed to take an action. And now it's summer, there is lots of greens. I felt like, well, I need to eat a bit lighter. I need to eat more salads, more greens, more nutritious food, and be in tune with the season. And I've noticed that actually last night I slept much better. So that was kind of listening to the message, not just ignoring it, but listening to the great intelligence and following it. I would call it self-love.
Yeah.
That's something I've done for 2 months before, but you know.
But you came back to it. Yeah.
Exactly.
I think that's another good point, is that really surrendering to love, self-love, or any other kind of love is very different to giving up, you know, and I know I've done this for years and years, you know, giving up in the sense of, oh, I'm going to sit on the sofa, I'm not going to exercise, I'm going to eat crap. That's not self-love, that's not surrender, that's not acceptance, that's abusing yourself, you know, under the guise of feeling whatever you're feeling, you know, because self-love is listening to what your body really needs, and what your body needs is healthy food, and it needs to move. And I'm not saying this in, you know, in the I'm do this perfectly or anything like that at all, but because I'm moving more and I'm eating better than I have done before, I'm feeling the benefits of it. And I still eat crap sometimes, and I still sit on the sofa sometimes, but it's nice to see or be able to feel the effects of the self-love versus the abuse, the self-abuse. You know, and I think we can sometimes slip into those patterns of, oh, well, you know, I'm just going to put an excuse. I'm not saying you, I'm talking about me here, you know, I'm just going to put an excuse on it, and the excuse is more palatable to me, so that'll be fine, you know, rather than the truth, which again is going back to that tough love. The tough love for me is, you know, stop being so lazy and get off your ass and start doing some exercise. That's love. Whereas, you know, the excuse is not love. The excuse is a lie, really.
One thing I found recently is that because I've been enjoying cooking and I've been putting some love into that, I was eating my own love. And I was like, okay, I'm getting fat. I'm going to stop eating water.
I'm full of love. Filling.
Oh.
I'm so full of love, I can't move.
It was actually quite interesting when we were selling the house. I remember the advice was to put the cinnamon around the house, and that's what I was talking about, that my husband got attracted to all the cinnamon smell around the house. I didn't want to smell it anymore.
It backfired.
So you can fall into your own trap.
Manipulation, there you go.
Here we go. That's funny.
So that was our conversation about love in a number of different forms. We might do another podcast about it because it seems like there's more to say. I don't know why I said that. That's so not true.
There probably is more to say. It probably is true.
After going, I've got nothing to say. So that was our conversation about love. Thank you for listening. This was our Worried About Nothing podcast. Do something. No, don't.
Just spread the virus and let everyone come and join our
Give me a brain, please. I'm missing one. If you like what you're hearing, do like our video and subscribe to our channel so you can be kept up to date with our future videos. Thanks very much. Bye.